everybody, this is Geronimo from the Beyond Taboo podcast, and I'm here joined by Mandy Hart, sexologist and sex and relationship coach. How are you doing, Mandy? All good?
I'm good. How are you?
Everything well over here. Thanks for coming. A pleasure to share this space for you guys that may be listening or watching us for the first time. Beyond Taboo is a podcast where, well, we address and discuss topics that we certainly need to talk about more. And sometimes, well, there's just not the chance to do it. So we do the hard work here and talk about those topics so we can all be part of this discussion and hopefully raise new questions, reflections, or answers. So today I'm here joined by Mandy, and well, we'll talk about some interesting points, masculinity, sex life for men. It will be an interesting journey for sure, that's for sure. So maybe for a start, Mandy, I'd love you to tell me a little bit about your journey with sexology and how actually it all started. Why sexology?
So, I have been fascinated by sex pretty much as long as I can remember. I'm 39 and I used to watch things on TV from a very early age, real sex on HBO. Um,
I sat.
and like Loveline, and I was just so curious and, quite frankly, horny. Um, and so, and as a kid, very young, I didn't have any shame around that, or if I did, I didn't really understand it. So it
Hmm.
just kind of seems like, hey, this seems fun, and I'm interested in it, and so my my mind has just always been curious, um and really it's just been a part of me forever. um
Hmm.
yeah, and then
You mean your curiosity about sex, like
yeah,
it's
and
been
an
a part.
openness,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
understanding
That's
it,
important.
and yeah, and just the idea of it being fun, like,
Hmm.
it just was attractive to me in that it just seemed like a fun thing to do. um
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to have a mom who was pretty open and talked about sex with me from an early age. She was a nurse, and um,
Hmm.
then, she ended up working for a gynecologist when I was in high school, and I used to go and help out in the office. And so I just was exposed to
Hmm. Makes sense.
resources.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it just never, you know, it was always something I wanted to embrace and learn about. And then
Hmm.
as I got older in college, I realized there was still so much I needed to learn. And um, I had some personal experiences, but I also took like a human sexuality class in college, and it just sort of blew up my world. Uh, Knowing that there was still so much to know, and
Hmm.
so yeah, then I went and
And
got my
teach.
yeah. I
Nice.
yeah. Teaching sex education is really difficult because so many people have different beliefs about what teaching does.
Hmm.
Some people
Hmm.
think if we educate uh, about sex, then it's like passive permission for our kids to have sex, versus
Hmm.
if we just tell them not to do it. Um, that's like a
Yeah, you
big
get to hear those
argument.
things. That's true. Hmm.
So I don't know. And then there's just people mix their values into it so much that they don't focus maybe as much on just research or facts. Um,
Hmm.
they put a lot of their opinions and expectations on it, and that
Hmm.
sends really confusing messages to people, I think, young people who are learning.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's yeah, it's definitely a hard or difficult scenario to pave the way to provide like full and whole sexual education that actually matters and helps. So yeah, I understand what you mean. I was wondering, Mandy. You mentioned you had this curiosity already, but do you remember, for example, if okay, you were pushed by an urge to help people in general, or was there something you were curious about men? Were you, for example, um, sharing spaces with men that made you wonder, okay, maybe I should follow this career path? You know, how was that moment when you decided, okay, I'll do this?
So there were, I would say, a bunch of little moments that kind of led me to getting my certification and making this a career.
Hmm?
But when it comes to helping men, I've been on a couple different platforms, um, anonymous type things where
Hmm.
people are a little bit more open and honest about their experiences. And
Hmm.
what I have found was
Mm-hmm.
I was spending a lot of time talking to men of
Okay.
different ages. I mean, probably 18 to 60s. And
Big
I was,
range.
yeah, and I was finding myself in a lot of conversations with men um, who carried a lot of shame and a lot of self judgment and repression of like their sexual desires. And all they
Hmm.
wanted to do was talk about it with a woman who could say, hey, I don't think this is that weird, or I don't think this is wrong. I think this is hot, or, um, oh, it doesn't turn me off to hear you say that. Let's talk about it more.
Hmm.
And when guys, especially people socialized as men who are told that maybe their sexuality is wrong or
Hmm.
bad in some way, dangerous,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
they they feel really embraced and seen when a woman allows it, and it gets really interesting, and it opens a door to being able to do real work. Um,
Hmm.
and and yeah, I mean, I've been motivated to help people, men, women, people of all genders, species. I like working with animals. Um, and so I think it just kind of was something that found me, maybe. Like I
Hmm.
found that I had a knack for it, perhaps. And
Okay,
yeah,
makes sense.
I know.
You know, it's interesting now that you say how well, not just men. I mean, I find very interesting how well actually sharing a conversation with a woman for some guys definitely help things flow, or like drop preconceived ideas about their sexuality. So I was wondering, we definitely come with a baggage about or prefabricated perception of our sexuality, or what you think or feel about our sexuality. So where do you think all that comes from? Especially when you get these sort of stories actually from your consultations from clients, or with the guys you've shared all of these many conversations, I mean, do you see any patterns? What's actually mostly holding uh, guys back when it comes to just enjoying freely?
Fear of the perception that others may have of them being perverted or sleazy
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
predatory. I,
Hmm.
I see that manifest in different ways, but I would say one theme in working with men versus women is men have this fear or shame that if they're open with their sexuality, it makes them um, like less than human. Like it makes them
Okay.
more, um,
Like savage or
yeah,
something like that, you know?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and that's not a good thing. If that makes
Hmm.
sense.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah, yeah, I get where you're going. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, certainly expressing sexual desire, it's frankly quite limited on public discussions or between people. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually makes sense for guys to feel like that. But I wouldn't have expected, for you to hear that so much uh, from guys. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely interesting for me. But yeah, at the same time, so much we need to work on when it comes to sexual education for guys to start dropping those ideas that, well, prevent them from enjoying. So, in that sense, I was wondering, how do you usually approach cases like that with guys? I mean, is this like the biggest issue you see on your consultations, or I mean, does this phenomena represent like the biggest issue, let's say, when it comes to understanding sexuality for men now, today? Or are there some other issues or factors you have been seeing, entangled with this thing? I mean, how do you see actually sexuality today for guys, for people?
So I've had the privilege of speaking with men from all over the world because of the platforms where I am connected with people. It's
Uh
more
huh.
on like a global scale
Okay,
than just limited to the
that's
U.S.
interesting. So you get
Where
to hear like very different points of view actually, and from different places. That's interesting.
yeah, and the one thing that's in common, no matter what, with everyone is shame. Everyone
Hmm.
has it around something, but
Hmm.
it seems, at least with the men that speak with me, it seems that shame is almost always a big factor in what's holding them back or making them
Okay.
want to change. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I've spoken with men who are in relationships or who are single. And so, you know, there's all kinds of things that bring people to me. But I would say probably my biggest challenge when I'm working with men is just to foster a space where they can feel safe enough to be open with me because that fear is so strong.
Hmm.
Like they think that they expect a reaction out of me. Like as soon
Okay.
as they say something that they carry a lot of shame around or embarrassment, or they just maybe have been told by others in the past that it's bad or wrong, whatever it is that they're thinking or feeling, when they finally do open up and say whatever it is to me, it's like they expect me to just slam my computer shut or say, "Oh my God, I'm done. I can't talk to you anymore." Like this is not okay. But those are the places that I want to go, that I like to go.
Hmm.
And then when I
Hmm.
like lean in and I'm like, "Oh yeah, tell me more." Like that's so interesting. Then they're like, "Wait, what? This is weird. Like you're not And I would say there's probably that moment with almost every guy I think I've ever spoken to in one way or another.
Wow, that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. An interesting pattern for sure. I mean, it's certainly a thing to communicate not just fantasies, but whatever turns you on. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even in long-term couples. I mean, it's actually still a thing these days. And it's not that weird when you think about it. When you put into consideration the factor of how we share these topics as a society. Uh, so yeah, I guess it's certainly hard for guys to express whatever they're into for the first time, but liberating at the same time.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think I mean, that's a part of it, but there's so much that when I say guys, women, men, I'm talking whoever identifies. I'm not speaking specifically of anything other than just you identify as a man, or you identify as a woman, or somewhere in between or outside. I'm open to working with anyone of any gender.
Anybody?
But if we're going to just sort of work in generalizations, um, another thing that I found is that the men that I've worked with don't realize that it's okay for them to have feelings, any kind of
Hmm.
feelings,
Hmm.
whether it's sexual or um, intimate, emotional. You know, so I've heard so many guys say to me, I know I shouldn't feel this way, or I know I shouldn't think this way, or I know this is wrong. And my first reaction is, why? What's what's wrong with that? And then I'll hear, well, I'm the man. I'm supposed to be XYZ. And then I'm thinking,
Wow,
but is that who you are? Like, let's talk about who you are and how you really feel, not who you
that's a great
think you
approach.
should be. Because I
Hmm.
don't have a perception of who you should be. I'm very much like all about the individual and not necessarily trying to put people in boxes because of the way they look or the way they
Yeah,
identify,
yeah.
even. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, for sure. There are definitely a lot of different social mandates, and yeah, sort of not feeling emotions or not showing, let's say, vulnerability. It's actually a huge social mandate that lay upon our shoulders as men. So in that sense, I was wondering, um, because well, already that we usually talk on this space with different sexologists, and I usually get to hear quite different things about what guys bring to the consultations in terms of um, concerns, actually. So definitely, most of these concerns arise from the social mandates that sort of, yeah, maybe control us or tell us what to be in a sense. So, what are the other most common things you have been encountering, either on your consultations or in the platforms where you exchange with guys these these conversations? I mean, what are you identifying as the most common issues for guys?
I would say a big one is fear that if they can't please their partner or
Hmm.
or if they fail to please their partner, something that again can look different, but there's either a fear of, I don't think I can please my partner, I don't think I'm capable, or I'm
Hmm.
afraid that she's lying to me, that she's saying she
Well,
is enjoying herself, but she's really not, and that ultimately that they won't be loved. But
wow,
also, yeah, also, I
that's
mean,
a huge one.
yeah, and I think that's really universal for any person, not just men. But
That's true.
um, yeah, but then there's also a lot of times what's interesting is I'll speak with men who have a lot of complaints about their partner. Like, my partner won't do this. She's not open to this. She's not wanting to do this. Da, da, da. And then the more we talk, the more like we realize together that maybe that's not really the sole or main issue. That's
And
kind
what's the
of
main issue?
um, a lot of times it's lack of communication or lack of proper effective communication. But then also a lot of times it's that the person I'm speaking with is not really seeing, they're having a hard time empathizing with their partner,
Okay.
and
Hmm.
also because they're carrying shame around what it is that they want, they're also
Hmm.
lacking self-compassion, and so they're they're just coming at it from a very judgmental aspect where they're judging both their partner and themselves in that situation.
Wow.
And that makes
Hmm.
it very difficult to just say, okay, well, here's what you need to do, because it's not that simple. And
No, for sure.
and again, that's another universal thing. I mean, I see women saying similar things where they're complaining, and it's like, okay, well, let's back up. Let's take a step back and look at this a little bit more objectively, and see why why these things might be happening, and not focus so much on the blame and shame. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I'm guessing you get to hear similar things, either with men or women. But um, I mean, for sure, a lack of communication must be like the biggest issue. But from what guys expect or usually um, bring to your conversations with them, what differences or similarities actually do you see between what guys say and what women say about these issues, either with the relationships or if they're single?
Um, I would say overall, probably one of the most across the board
Hmm.
things that everyone has in common when it comes to relationships and intimacy is struggling to listen empathetically. So we listen to people and our brains automatically start to defend or poke
Hmm.
holes and think, oh, well, you're wrong because of this. That didn't really happen. It happened this way. And then when
Hmm.
we're defending ourselves, which is natural, I mean, it makes sense. Um, we fail to just hear the other person and understand how they're feeling, because we're just
Hmm.
sort of negating their experience in our minds because it didn't happen that way for us. And while that's important, it's not as important as the other person's experience and what they're feeling, because that's their reality. So
Hmm.
I mean, they're both important. Your reality is important as well. But if we're ever going to understand each other, we need to figure out how to hear each other while putting ourselves and our own biases and experiences aside. And then once we do that, once we hear the other person and we can really empathize, then we can have our turn and we can say, okay, I hear you. I get that you're feeling this way. I get that this is your experience. I'm not disagreeing. I'm understanding and it makes sense. And then we can say, okay, now I want to share with you how I'm experiencing it. And then
That's a great approach, actually, for sure.
yeah, it's really hard. Um, it's really hard,
Indeed, I
especially
mean,
when
sorry to
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I just wanted to say, the other day I had a conversation with another professional, and he brought pretty much this topic or understood from a different perspective. I'm talking about this difficulty to communicate or empathize. And he brought the conversation in terms of an issue or something actually is going on with intimacy in general, like our possibility or ability to actually and genuinely connect with the other and actually to build that sort of to actually build intimacy with someone. It actually a big portion, I personally think that a big portion of that intimacy is, well, for sure, empathizing and hearing your significant other. But I feel like, yeah, these days, actually, it might be a long back issue, historical maybe. Uh, but we're definitely in a tough place right now when things are so individualized. I'm not sure what you think about it, but that's the feeling I
Yeah.
get.
Well, and I think I know what you're saying. I have a friend, and he and I talk about these things often. He's another sex coach, and I think what's interesting, and this sort of just occurred to me as I was listening to you, is when things are so individualized. Yeah, it can sort of um, create issues around connecting with others because maybe we're like lacking empathy. We're a little bit too self absorbed. But when I think of intimacy, I also think about intimacy within our own selves, like the connection between mind and body. And
Okay,
so,
I'd love to hear more about that.
so
Please
when,
expand.
yeah, so when you're really focused on the individual self, or you're really, I don't know how to put it, but when you're valuing that individuality, but also still carrying a lot of shame, then now you're having this struggle with intimacy with yourself. And I personally think, and this can be different, I'll never really say never or always for anything. Um, but generally speaking, I think if you have trouble with your own mind body connection and the intimacy within your own self, I think it makes having intimacy with others very challenging. Um,
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Also, yeah. Just that you said that, and on all, I mean, it will probably pose a difficult scenario for people that have that issue with connecting themselves. Uh, in terms of, well, what we actually think as a satisfying sexual encounter or experience or sexual intimacy, actually. Because, I mean, there's a ton of people that can definitely ensure an orgasm, or ensure an orgasm to their partner, for their partner. But the connection they have with themselves is so, let's say, neglected, that their own satisfaction usually isn't in the whole equation of that shared moment. And that can definitely, well, pose or generate a certain insatisfaction to the other partner. And it happens a lot. For example, two guys, I mean, and we can't blame or point people, because, well, we are raised in a world where you said it already. There's so much shame in, well, actually learning about what we like, what turns us on. So when you consider that, it's just hard for many people. So yeah, a rough point to, for sure, address with clients, I guess.
I think people don't always realize that having a desire is not the same thing as acting on it, and that there's different ways we can act on a desire.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'll give an example. Let's say you have a desire or a fantasy, something that turns you on, and it happens to be illegal. Well, there's a
Okay.
lot of people who might feel like that makes them a bad person. But we all feel things at times that can be really extreme, or uh, in proportion to maybe our anger or heat in the moment, but that's not something that we would ever really want or really do. And,
For sure.
we all experience that. And I mean, we're all human. And I feel like this gets said a lot to the point where it's kind of maybe the message is diluted of we're all human and humans aren't perfect. But it's true. And I think what we need to realize is having a desire or a thought is not causing harm to anyone, unless it's causing harm to our own selves if we are in an internal struggle. But it's when
Hmm.
we take action in some way, or we don't take action, where those feelings then can start to impact others. But let's say let's go back to the example of having a desire that happens to be illegal. Well,
Okay.
are there ways that you can act on those things that aren't illegal, but maybe give you the same sense of whatever feeling it is that you're wanting to feel? Yeah,
Hmm.
people role play all the time to do that, to get a sense
That's
of,
interesting.
yeah. And so it's like, you know, I like to say what happens in your head stays in your head. Um, so, for example, I'm switching examples. You have, this is just hypothetical, but it happens a lot, where you have a couple or partner, um, where if the other person thinks about somebody else while they masturbate, or they watch porn and they masturbate, or they think about somebody else when they're having sex, then
Okay.
a lot of
That's a common
people,
one.
yeah, a lot of people feel like that's cheating. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with feeling hurt by that, or feeling like that goes outside the boundaries of the relationship that make you feel safe. but that's not a given. So
Hmm.
um, a lot of people will make assumptions. Like I see this again a lot, um, where people assume that everyone considers that cheating, or it's
Hmm.
like, an unspoken rule, but it's not. And so then we get back to talking about ineffective communication or lack of communication. All these things overlap. There's no way that you can really talk about one thing without leading into another. So these things are very nuanced, and the dynamics can be really complicated. But
Oh, for
um,
sure.
but I think when you honestly, I kind of lost the thread of why I started talking about fantasizing about other people, and uh, but I guess ultimately my point is really I will boil down to this. This may be one of the only times that I will say always kind of thing. If
Okay.
you have consenting adults who have like informed consent where they've discussed, they're not just saying yes to something they don't understand, or they don't understand maybe the risks involved. Because consent's not perfect. That's messy in itself too. But if you
Hmm.
have consenting adults and nobody's getting hurt in a way that isn't desired or wanted and doesn't break any laws, because or maybe it breaks the law, but you're not. It's hard to give these kinds of examples where there's not always going to be some sort of exception. But generally speaking, when you have consenting adults who know what they're consenting to, anything goes. Really,
Hmm. Hmm. That's
I
great
don't know.
advice. Yeah, that's true. Hmm.
People can get confused about what that means, um, but that's why everything is kind of goes back to that individual basis. What's true for one person might not be true for another. So, um, but I think
That's
it's
true. I
important.
mean, we're all different,
Yeah.
and we have all these. I mean, we're so different in so many ways. So, I mean, I actually think like pretty much like you're proposing that. Well, communication is somehow the bridge that can help us, connect and have this mutual understanding and, well, yeah, generate empathy and pleasure at the same time in intimacy. So, yeah, I mean, at the same time, that's so hard to build. So I feel like it's very important to actually have these spaces where, well, people can open up, even individually, either individually or probably also with much more of potential sometimes when you do it with your couple. So yeah, I mean that's very important. And now, I was wondering, I had this question lingering when you mentioned you spent a lot of time on these forums. Um, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the struggles you saw and what advice you could potentially give to those guys uh, to fully enjoy their sex lives. I mean, I'm not sure if you could share a little bit about, well, those platforms, or maybe like what topics you talked about with these people. But I'd love to hear about it.
I would say if more people could just find a way to allow themselves to
Hmm.
have the feelings that they have to want the things that they want and do it in a way where they don't feel like it's wrong, like you
Hmm.
allow it, but you allow it with compassion.
Uh-huh.
It opens so many more doors to connection.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
um, are we, speaking of connection, are we connected still? Okay,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I
showing
hear
me.
you.
Okay, it just, I'm seeing it says trying to reconnect. So I don't, if I
Oh,
break up, let me know. Um,
yeah, sure.
so what I mean by that is so many men, particularly, I would say this probably happens more with men than women. So much of what I hear is if I could just not want this, or if I could just change the way I do this, or if I could just be different somehow,
Hmm.
then it would fix these problems. And I'm thinking,
Hmm.
but what if you just embraced who you are and you accepted that and then engaged in a way that honored those things?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that really actually be better? Because you
For
deserve
sure.
you deserve happiness and you deserve to be seen. Your job isn't to do things or say things or be someone just so that you can get the the woman or have sex. Like, what's the goal? Is the goal to engage inauthentically just so you can get the score? Or is it to show up as yourself and connect in a way that actually feels good?
Hmm.
But it's very hard to just say, oh, hey, don't feel shame, feel proud. People, it doesn't, that switch doesn't flip like that.
No, no, definitely. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Uh, but I find it very interesting. I mean, how you, I guess I'll use the word diagnose, like how this sort of intersects, like the main issue when it comes to, well, being sexual actually, and connecting with someone, and yeah, it's certainly so hard for us to I mean, just be, when there's so much messages or signs or things we stumble upon along the way that tells us quite the opposite to what we actually want to be or feel. So I really like how you sort of focused the problem into being honest with yourself and accepting and honoring yourself. And I think that's a great message and advice, actually, Mandy, to sort of close our whole reflection. I think I find it very interesting. Um, but I was wondering if you could be open to share a little bit of what you think. Uh, Not, you could think about it if you want, like in terms of practical steps. But if you were going to propose or suggest anyone that's actually watching or listening to us and felt something about this that we talked about, that sort of resonated, what would you recommend if that's either a book or a movie or, yeah, actually, like the tip you could propose to someone to just connect with themselves, you know?
There are two books actually that I recommend a lot to people, and I think
Uh-huh.
they're great for anyone. But I I have gotten feedback from men who've actually read them who really learned a lot or it spoke to them in some way. It's actually, they're both written by the founders of the Somatica Institute, which is where I got my certification. And
Uh-huh.
I don't get anything for promoting them. I just think they're really good books. And
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have gotten my certification from them if I didn't believe in what they do. Their
Hmm.
names are Danielle, Harel, and Celeste Hirschman. And
Uh-huh.
the books are, and I can send you the info, but the books are called,
I'd love that.
yeah, they're great. It's Making Love Real, and
Hmm.
the other one is called Coming Together. Uh,
I love that
they actually
title.
have, yeah, they actually have another one that's written for men called
Hmm.
Cockfidence. I have not, I know,
I love that one.
I have not actually read that one, but I imagine it's good because I,
Yeah.
I love, I love both of their messages. I mean, I really believe in their values and philosophies. Um, but these books are really good because the Coming Together book is really helpful for understanding why your desires form or how they form and what they could possibly mean or how you could possibly figure out how to engage in a way that satisfies you in ways that you might not necessarily realize. Um,
Hmm.
and then I'm sorry, Making Love Real, that one has a lot of really good advice for how you can communicate about that stuff. Um, they're
Hmm.
both really good in for both of those things. They kind of overlap in that way. But Making Love Real has a lot of practical advice for communicating and listening empathetically and maybe understanding our partners or even ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
and then Coming Together goes a little bit more into the pathways of our desire,
Ah, that's
and
interesting.
how we heal ourselves through sexuality.
That's a huge one. That's a huge one. I mean, sex can be so profound when, I mean, you give it the chance to actually, yeah, just connect in be happy about yourself, about your body, about,
Mhm.
yeah, just even life and the pleasure it can give you. So
Mhm.
I feel like those are two great recommendations. So yeah, definitely let's add those links so people can actually uh, get them if they're interested. Um, and I must say, Mandy, this was a very interesting chat. I loved how you framed our conversation into actually uh, this approach or way of thinking, you know, our sexuality and putting all that shame aside, you know, certainly a big challenge for many people. So I appreciate you bringing all these tips and advice. I love your approach. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I had a lot of fun.
Good, thanks. I know that there's so much more we could talk about. If we were to kind of narrow in on things, I think you probably wanted me to go into more specific. Like I kind of kept it pretty broad in general, um, but these topics are really
It was perfect.
complicated. Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
I would love to do this again and maybe get
For
into.
sure. I mean, I love that. The doors are always open, and yeah, we can even arrange something for next month and touch some other topic and see what people actually is interested from this episode to keep hearing more about it. So I love that. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Cool.
So yeah,
Thanks.
I appreciate it a lot, Mandy. Thanks a lot. I had a lot of fun. Let's do this again
Okay.
soon. Hmm.
Sounds good.
Bye bye. So
Bye.
thanks everybody. Thanks Mandy, and let's talk. Let's talk soon, guys. You know already the links are on the description. You have two big recommendations. You'll find the link to Mandy's website if you are interested in booking a consultation with her and addressing the topics. If you feel like something about all the things we talked resonates with you, don't hesitate to reach out. So guys, thanks a lot.